Hi everyone, we're going to replace the alternator on this 2007 Chevy Malibu. The alternator is part of the car's electrical system. It's spun by the engine's power and it powers all of the electrical components. The alternator's output is based on the wire windings, which multiply the voltage. It uses an electromagnet, a rectifier, and a regulator to produce power, and that's how power is produced to the car. The job of the battery is to start the engine. Once the engine is running, the alternator is putting a charge back into the battery, as well as supplying power to the rest of the vehicle. Most cars use a 12-volt system and need a 12-volt battery. Batteries can fail with major weather changes, and a bad battery can act like a bad alternator. The first part of a diagnostic of any electrical system is to make sure that you have a good battery. Hooking up the negative and positive terminals to your multimeter set to the volts in DC function, we're getting 12.3 volts output from the battery, which is a sufficient charge. Once the engine is running, the alternator supplies between 13.5 and 15 volts to the battery. The alternator is located under all these covers, so to get access to it, we're gonna remove the airbox tube. We're gonna disconnect the mass airflow sensor wire. Disconnect the battery. I'm also gonna remove the upper engine cover. You gotta remove the oil cap to get to that. Place the oil cover back in order to make sure no debris gets in there. We're gonna undo this coolant line in order to get better access to the alternator. We've got to remove the drive belt first, because the drive belt is what spins your alternator. I'm going to remove the lower airbox in order to get access to the drive belt tensioner. I want to put the bolt back in order to make sure we know where it came from. This tensioner shows to be weak because of how easy I can pull on this belt. Since I don't have the right tool, which is the 1/2-inch drive, I'm going to try and sneak this belt off by hand. Now that we've got the belt removed, we're going to remove the alternator mounting bolt and idler pulley from here, as well as 2 alternator mounting bolts here and here. The bolt will not come out, okay? That's because it's going to come out with the alternator all as one unit. We've got all our bolts pretty much free. The alternator is now loose. We're going to disconnect all the wiring. We've got to disconnect the power wire here. We're going to remove our power wire and electrical connector. Now we're going to undo our alternator. Got one bolt out. There we go. And there it is. Just the way you took it out. We're going to attach our idler pulley to the alternator before mounting it. And then we're going to run our first bolt into the alternator. Once you've got this bolt started, go ahead and start the second bolt. And then lastly, start your alternator bottom bracket bolt. Now that we've got the alternator bolted down and the two upper bolts and the lower mounting bolt, we're going to install the belt according to the belt diagram. We've got our drive belt tensioner tool installed onto the drive belt tensioner. We're going to go ahead and crank on it in order to slack the drive belt, and then we're going to position that belt. Once you've got the drive belt installed properly, routed through all the pulleys correctly, go ahead and install the connectors on the other side. Go ahead and install your power connector. Reconnect your upper radiator hose. And tighten it. Hose clamps like this should be adjusted and checked regularly as they can loosen up. We're going to put the lower airbox back in. We're going to reinstall our upper airbox cover and air intake boot. This airbox slides in through the front and clamps down in the back. We're going to reconnect the mass airflow sensor. We're going to resecure those air intake boots. We're going to put the upper engine cover on. We're going to reconnect the battery. And let's start the engine. We're going to test the alternator to make sure that it's giving us the right output. Set your voltmeter to DC. We are now getting 15 volts, which is a healthy alternator. Everything checks out okay. Car's running great. Leave your questions in the comments, and thanks for watching.